Hey everyone, I'm Dee.
And I'm Max.
And on this episode, we're going to take a look at judgment, specifically judging our spouse. And we're going to look at parenting because that was an area of intense judgment.
She traumatized me, y'all.
I sure did. I didn't know better. And how it's so easy to get to that space of judgment and not even realizing it. Yeah. And how did that affect the other person?
Correct. Yeah.
Right? And how it also affects me, because I didn't realize that being in that space also have an impact on me. We're going to explore how practicing self-awareness changes that dynamics and, where we are now.
So the good news is that we overcame it. So in this conversation, we are going to take you on a 20-minute journey from where it started and how it ended, or where we are right now. So thank you for your time, and we are looking forward to sharing with you this story, and hopefully you can take any anecdote that works with you and works for you and for your family. Enjoy.
So my first baby, or our first baby girl, right? For whatever reason, I don't know if it's evolution, but I think it's something. And I just thought that automatically I was the better parent. Mm-hmm. And, you just needed some work.
I don't know. I think it's just a weird dynamic just altogether, because it's not only you. When you first introduced the topic, you said, when I had my first baby, like I had nothing to do with it.
Oh, did y'all catch that?
Right. Like I had nothing, I had nothing to do with it. But no, that is a weird dynamic that you hear, specifically more so in like two-parent households, like split-parent households. Where it's like, oh no, that's my son or that's my daughter, type of thing. And it's like, wait, I was there too, and I have as much experience as you do, but when baby comes in, it's like.
So I have a theory.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking maybe something to do with, just evolution. So maybe at the time, when I became a mom, mm-hmm. something just flipped.
Of course.
And
I agree with that. It's a maternal instinct. I think that's what you're trying to get to.
Yes. But what I don't know mm-hmm. is what caused, like we became parents at the same time, but what caused me to feel like I'm just the natural parent, like the better parent.
Well, I did have some shortcomings. That switch flipped for me a little later on in life, so I wouldn't just blame everything on you, right? So I think in some cases you were within reason to think that way, because there were just some things that just wasn't natural to me, when it comes to protecting the family or putting the family first, like, yeah, absolutely. But there were times where you're like, hey, did you change it?
True.
I'm like, yeah, I did change a diaper. But like, yeah, but did you change it every couple? I'm like, I didn't smell nothing. Did you check?
Your thing was like, they would have let me know.
Right. So that's the thing. No, honestly, that was my thing. I really thought like, hey, that they would always cry. It took some growing up. So I would say some of the criticism was warranted, but it did get to a place where it was like, all right, man.
It was, because I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah. So I wasn't honest before? I'm joking.
No,
I got you.
I'm talking about myself.
Yeah.
Right? It's one thing to be giving like feedback, mm-hmm. but I had to learn that later. Yeah. So before it was some heavy criticism, you just couldn't do it. If it wasn't done my way, it wasn't right. It wasn't correct. Or I feel like I have to come back and, kind of like I have to go back behind you.
Got it.
type of thing.
Got it.
Yeah. How did that make you feel?
It's not more so what was said. It was more so how it was said. So what I would ask you naturally, what was your anecdote, right? So what triggered you to be like, hey, I think I need to fall back a little bit, and what was that process?
Okay, so there's not one specific like moment I can really point to, but I remember just having those, sometimes you just get those little moments of like self-reflection, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I think I had this image in my head that, I want to say I was like perfect or anything, but I just had this idea in my head that
you had to figure it out.
I may have a few things I need to work on, but not as much as, the other person.
In that case, me.
But then when, you
The abuse,
you get confronted with yourself and you realize that you're really not in a position to judge as much as I was passing judgment, because I had my own shortcomings too and things that I needed to work on. So that was very humbling. It did take a minute to like absorb that, because a part of me was resistant, like,
right.
What? So then you realize that definitely that judgment was coming from a prideful place to give way for pride. So it was hard to like accept it. And then it was even harder for me to
let go,
like share it with you. It was like, the word just wouldn't come out.
Which word?
Like to acknowledge that, okay, I have things to work on too. Like I was thinking in my head, but it took some time for it to start coming out in like conversation where we, it was like really, it was like pulling like,
baby, I'm not. What was that, hon? I found out that I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
So,
are you really gonna force me to say it?
So I had to get to a place of like moving away from that pride. You have to have humility and just accept where you are.
Yeah.
And then it allows me now to have a level of understanding towards you. And then I can have, extend grace, because I want grace extended to me as well. Especially when I found out, or not that I found out, but let's say I'm the parent that the kids could get over on.
Yeah.
All the time. And
no judgment.
I had no clue, right? I'm like, it's my babies, right? And
we have smart kids.
They're very smart.
But
I will overly like baby them.
Yeah.
And then they would get over on me. But I'm not noticing that they're getting over on me. You, on the other hand, they couldn't play certain things with you, right? And it's like you would call them out on certain things. And then when I catch on later on, I realize like, wait, he's really good at like reading these kids, right? So I started noticing the areas that you were strong and where I wasn't, and then seeing how it kind of complement each other.
Yeah.
So then you focus on the other person's strength. So that's what I end up doing. You covering my blind spot. I cover your blind spot. Together I would say balance each other out, but we just bring a different dynamic
I was thinking that, yeah.
And then, me stepping back and allowing you to just do what you do, I saw how impactful that was on the kids. Just letting you do your thing your own way. And at that point too, it caused me to even relax a whole lot more. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when we became a united front, the dynamic with the kids changed. I don't want to say that they didn't respect me. They did, but it was more so on a fearful
I mean, they were just scared.
Right. On a
And you were like, yeah, you got to put a fear of God in there. Like, that's how you do it. I'm like, oh.
I sure did. I sure did.
I know, you were like,
right.
You kind of like puff your chest, like, yeah, I did that.
And right. And I mean, and that I had to, grow up from. But what happened is it always seemed like the dynamic to the kids, it always seemed like I was the villain and you were always superhero. So every time, I come in to discipline, you always came in, well, hon, what if we do this instead? And you remember I used to get pissed off with you. I was like, we're not having this conversation in front of the kids.
I know.
Like, oh my, I would.
Yes, I would. I used to say things because I felt
red.
Like I felt like I had to defend the kids because in my mind, you're not as great with the kids like I am. So I felt like I had to come and defend them all the time. And the thing is, something like I could talk to them rough, but when you talk to them rough, it's just not the same kind of rough, and I don't like your kind of rough. So
yeah. So listen, I would see red.
So
and there were times, we had to go to the room and we had to debrief.
We had to debrief. And that's one thing I learned is one, respect. Like, how does that look like, especially in parenting and respecting each other roles, right? And our differences and what we bring to the table. It wasn't just what I was saying, it's how I was saying it. Word choice, tone, like we spoke about. Like, I had to understand how respect played a role and how important it was.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And what the dynamic was, and I don't say it's that anymore. I think we're more on a unified front and we have an understanding as far as how we're moving the family forward all together. So it's not just in a box of, hey, parenting, this is my role, this is your role. But before we got to the unified front, there were things that we had to establish that we didn't come out and say exactly. We didn't say, oh, hey, okay, this is the play-by-play, this is what's happening. So for you, naturally, you're very maternal and you're nurturing, right? So it doesn't only go to the kids, but even how your sister speaks about you. Because remember when you guys came to the States, she always says, oh, this was my second mom, or this is my second mom, and my mom wasn't,
Oh, so I was a mom in training a long time.
So she said that, and she says that a lot, right?
So me thinking I was the better parent was accurate.
Ma'am, let me finish. Okay, let me
carry
finish.
on.
So anyways, I think that was just natural for you, right? That was natural for you. For myself, when just naturally how I run things, you say the way I see patterns and things like that. You say that's my superpower. Like you make a big thing out of it, but I'm able to see that, and by doing that, I'm able to make decisions for the future. And for me, I'm seeing my kids right then and there, but I'm like, you know what? I need to instill certain morale and certain things in them so that when they're 13, 14, 18, 20, 25, 30, and beyond, it becomes natural to them, right? So me instilling certain things into them, this is the training ground. This is where I want to see them mess up. This is where I want to see them excel. This is where I wanted to see, hey, you know what? You're doing well. Or, hey, let's work on this, right? So I would say I was a little bit of a drill sergeant, right? And we spoke about this before because I did have a fear. I didn't want to be a bad parent, number one, but I didn't want my kids turning out to, be, for lack of a better term, invalids, right? So I'm like, you know what? I need to instill in them as much, not only confidence, but skills. And, remember my thing back then was critical thinking. You remember? And I felt
that was an era. That was an era.
Yeah.
And I would listen to you lecture these kids like they were college students. And I would say, babe, there's certain parts in their brain not even activated yet for critical thinking. And we still have adults that still can't critically think. And to expect this 4-year-old to think critically.
I mean, they weren't 4.
And you were very serious.
They weren't 4. They were a little older, but
even his word choice sometimes, and I was like,
okay. I mean, we both had some growing up to do. Okay, but the intention was.
It was good.
It was good. It was good. It was well-meaning, right?
I felt for my babies, y'all. But we had to give each other room,
Yeah,
to...
yeah. So anyways, see, you threw me off. You threw me off my point.
I just remember that time. It was.
But anyways, coming back to the dynamic, and going back to what you said, is that we had to, within ourselves, we had to go through a period of self-reflection and realize, like, hey, this is a strong point for me. However, this is a strong point for my partner. The other hard part was not only digesting that, I didn't figure parenting out, but it was listening to the critique and taking that and saying, okay, all right, that's something I definitely need to work on. And when we started self-managing and we were able to be open, and I told you, like, listen, you need to respect me in front of the kids. Now, I didn't feel like you disrespected me.
Because I didn't know that was not respectful,
Yeah, let me finish. I didn't feel like you were disrespectful to me in any other area, right? And I get it was, and there was a part of me that understood it was the mama bear. But even though these are our kids, these are my kids, you have to teach them, right? So the same way how I go in the paint for you, if they talk sideways, if they talk, Papa Bear comes out and set them straight. I set a standard. That is what I wanted back, and I felt like that was lacking. So when we were able to get through that rough patch, that's when we graduated. We gradually graduated into where we are now, where we have a unified front, one story, one play,
same team,
one goal. And yeah, that was it. That was it for me.
Yeah, because I had to understand that you also wanted the best for them too. Like, you're coming from a good space.
Correct, yeah.
It's the same for me. So we both love our children. We both want the best for them.
Yeah.
So that realization also helped. There's certain areas you're just better at. And if I'm dealing with the kids, I'm like, oh, this is the daddy area. Let me go get, I may not say to them, but I'm like, let me go get your opinion, right? And then you do the same thing. So there's certain things you would, send them my way, and there's certain things I will send them your way.
Yeah.
And just realizing that that's it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Because what you don't want to create a space where the kids feel like they can pick sides, right? And that's what happened with me growing up, where it felt like because I chose to be with my mom more, that I wanted my mom, that, okay, mama's boy. And that my brother chose to be with my dad's, but with my dad, it's like, oh yeah, okay, well he's a daddy's boy, and it's like, no, listen, we're growing up, and we need you guys just as equally, you know. And us growing up, you see that, and then as we got older, I mean, we're better now, but as we got older, you saw us kind of grow apart because it always felt like me and mom versus dad and C, you know. And until I just had to remove myself from it. And I'm like, you know, y'all gonna keep that shit to yourselves. If I need to call mom, I call my mom. If I need to speak to my dad, I'm like, Mom, not right now. I need to speak to my dad. I have some questions for him. You know, I'm not playing the sides. And that's what I didn't want with my kids. You know, my parents didn't intentionally do it. They didn't intentionally do it. I think what happened is they just attached themselves to the kid that gave them more affection, right? Or gave them more attention. And I did not want any of my kids to feel that, you know, and I didn't want them to feel, oh, because mom always always protects me, she has more affection for me, and dad is the villain.
Yeah.
I didn't want that dynamic. That's what it was, and that's why I used to see red. You know what I'm saying? Because unknowingly, I've lived that, and I'm like, yo, this is not a pattern I'm trying to repeat again. Yeah. You know, like in some spaces they call it the generational curses. I wouldn't go that far, but as you grow and as you have an awareness and you know better, do better. That's just why I see it point blank.
In conclusion, I just want to drive home that it is so easy to fall into judgment of your partner. And a lot of time we're so critical of other people because we're on the inside, we're very critical of ourselves, which, you know, we'll discuss in another episode. But I just want to point out that practicing self-awareness, like that's what really started changing the game for me. Practicing self-awareness and just understanding that we also have our own fault and shortcoming. I won't say fault, but areas that we can improve on. And when we want other people to extend grace to us in those moments, we have to be able to extend that grace as well. And if you take that position of dealing with your partner from love and compassion, it changes how you will interact with that person. You can give feedback, but it's genuine feedback because it is coming from a place of love and compassion. It's a teamwork. It's a journey. You got to keep on working on yourself. You got to keep on working on the relationship.
Correct.